Welcome, everyone. I am Mariam Simantwala. I'm with the Office of International Religious Freedom at the U.S. Department of State, and I'd like to take the opportunity to welcome you to a historic event, the first ever high-level virtual roundtable discussing disability and religious freedom at the U.S. State Department. This event is being recorded, and the link will be available on YouTube. So keeping that in mind, we're asking for a few things, and I'm just going to go over that bit of housekeeping. First, if panelists could keep yourselves on mute and turn off your video feed unless you are speaking or answering a question, that will help conserve bandwidth and keep you all and us and the principals' clarity clear and good. Second, in the chat box, you'll find a couple of things. The first is a phone number in case you lose connectivity. You want to make note of that phone number, the meeting ID and passcode, so that you can call in and you can still participate in, even if you lose audio or video transmission. Second, for those who need video captioning and would like to avail of it, there is a link for the live stream of the video caption. You'll have to open it in a separate URL window, but it is simultaneous. And with that, what I'd now like to do is open it up to our principals to provide. My echo is back. I'm not sure why. Connie, our technical moderator. Connie Saunders is assisting us with some of these kinks. I'll go ahead and continue. I think we've got the echo resolved. So I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce our very distinguished principals who will be leading this roundtable. I will, as the moderator, basically provide the introductions, interject to keep us on time in the flow. But this is a discussion between you all, our esteemed principals, and our all around the world. Ambassador for International Brownback has had a career in public service for over 30 years, a former senator and a member of the U.S. House of Representatives from Kansas, and most importantly, throughout his career has been champion right, religious freedom, disability rights. Will open this conversation with a comment. In addition, he's joined by Secretary for Democracy, Human Rights, Robert Destro. Both of these gentlemen were former lawyers and are, in their very nature, distinguished advocates. Assistant Secretary Destro has been a human rights advocate, a civil rights lawyer, an expert in employment and constitutional law, a former commissioner on the U.S. Commission for Civil Rights, and frankly, a true champion, once again, of interfaith collaboration, both in the United States and in the Middle East, a fighter for those who have been persecuted, who are prisoners of political conscience or religious beliefs, and a champion of individuals with disabilities. And so with that, I'd like to turn it over first to Ambassador Brownback and then to Assistant Secretary Destro to provide some opening comments.
Thanks, Miriam. Appreciate that very much. And welcome, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. The beauty of these things anymore is you can do it from anywhere and everywhere. And we're delighted that you've joined us. Just a few things really kicking this off. I'm delighted that we are doing this. This is part of our overall Every Life is Worthy campaign. And we've had an ongoing campaign to talk about every life being worthy. And I want to put that in a little bit of human rights context, if I can. I've been reading quite a bit about unalienable rights with the Secretary's Commission on this and the report that recently came out. And they talked about the foundation of the UN Declaration of Human Rights. And what they did in that document is they went to philosophers and religious practitioners all over the world to try to find the basic essences of what everybody agreed to were basic rights of human individuals. And at the very core of the whole thing was this concept that each and every life has incredible worth and dignity, because it is, not because of what it can do or who the person looks like or whether they can sing or dance or whatever the case might be. It's because they are who they are. They're incredible human. And they're dignified by virtue of that. And it's an incredible, immeasurable level of dignity. And that was the very foundational basis for the UN Declaration of Human Rights, off of which we build much of our work, along with the U.S. Constitution and the Bill of Rights that we build a lot of our work off of, is this just incredible dignity of the individual because of who they are, not because of what they do or what they can do or can't do. And that seems to me to be really right in the wheelhouse of what we're talking about here. Each individual has enormous worth, not because of what they do or can't do, but because they are and of who they are. They're an incredible, dignified child of the living God. And they're beautiful, and they're wonderful. And each society is benefited by the virtue of that society treating everybody as this incredible worth of an individual. I remember being on the North Korean-Chinese border years ago when I was allowed to try to travel to China. I'm not allowed now. But I was up there and working on North Korean human rights issues, and there were a number of stateless children in this area. They were born of North Korean women in China. China wouldn't accept them as citizens. They couldn't go back to North Korea, and they were stateless. And I was working on a bill to allow their adoption in the United States, and really to try to outline and talk about their situation. I was meeting with a Politburo member of China at that time and was saying, we want to really open up to be able to adopt these children. And his point back to me was, why? Well, why do you want these orphans? You know, what kind of value is that going to be in your society? And I was saying they are of incredible worth. What they are going to contribute will be immeasurable to our society. And indeed, this last weekend, a little girl that we had adopted out of China, I just got to walk down the aisle to get married this last Saturday. This is the tie that I wore at that wedding ceremony. And that moment for me was of incredible value, immeasurable value. And she's graduated from Baylor University. She's working at Dell Computer. She is a friend to many. And she has enormous worth. Every life is worthy. And that's what this is about. And we're particularly now focusing in on religious institutions and accessibility and work within those institutions for people with challenges, particular challenges that they may have. And it's my hope that we can talk about here what it is we can do to open up the doors of the church, the mosque, the synagogue, the temple, whatever the case might be, to those with disabilities, so that they can be allowed easy access, and it'd be a matter of us looking at them as inherently dignified, not because, okay, it's something we got to do, but because they have incredible worth and they're going to bring incredible value into the religious institutions. So, Miriam, thank you. I look forward to the panelist presentations, and I look forward to continuing this campaign of pointing out how worthy every life truly is. And it's great to be able to join with my compatriot, Bob Destro, who's a great champion in this field and many others. Thank you, and God bless everybody. I guess, Bob, over to you.
Okay, can everybody hear me? Very good. Okay, well, thank you, Sam. Thank you for Ambassador Brownback for including me this morning, and thank all of you for joining this important discussion. On behalf of the about 140 of us who are the Bureau of Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor, I want to underscore the State Department's commitment to advancing the rights of persons with disabilities. We work with governments across the globe to address exclusionary policies and practices against persons with disability. We publish an annual human rights report that features a section dedicated to advancing and reporting on the problems that people with disabilities have. And we try and document discrimination affecting persons with disabilities in all aspects of public life, including transportation, education, employment, and more. And what I also might add, and one of the things that I hope we get into this morning, I can see from the agenda and the statements that we will, and that is that disability rights, especially in light of the ongoing pandemic and lockdown that forces us to get together this way, has reminded us in a very profound way that we're all human beings and that we all, we can all be affected by this virus. And if we get sick, we have a disability. And that can happen to any of us. And so if anything is true, this pandemic reminds us of our common humanity. And as my neighbor has put it, when asked by my wife, how are you and your wife and the girls doing? And his comment was, well, he says, we're doing fine. He says, the introverts among us are doing really well. He says, the rest of us are climbing the walls. And it's just that basically speaks to, why we're here. I mean, the bottom line is the human rights are unalienable. They belong to us because we're human beings. Every single one of us is born with both abilities and disabilities. And we acquire or overcome disabilities throughout the course of our lives. But none of that acquisition, that overcoming, doesn't affect or change the measure of the human rights we have. What it does require is that we use the abilities we do have to ensure that every person on this planet is treated with dignity and is given the opportunity, an equal opportunity to develop their abilities, whatever they are, so that they can participate as equals in an incredibly diverse and vibrant society that we have here in the United States, and that we'd like to see as diverse and that we see around the world. So Ambassador Brownback and I are here this morning because we want to encourage faith leaders to amplify the message that we find in the Declaration of Independence, that we are actually, quote, endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, and among them are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Members of faith communities define their communities by their beliefs, not by the skills or abilities they have or by the color of their skin, but by their common commitment to a set of beliefs and their vision of right action. As people with rights, persons with disability, they're our neighbors. I certainly hope that, because I don't have certain abilities, I could not, to me, drawing a snowman in a blizzard would be about as good as my art abilities are. I don't expect people to judge me. I have to wear glasses. That's a disability. I said, but it doesn't change at all either my rights or the obligations of my fellow citizens to respect the rights and abilities that I have. So, what I would suggest here is that we need to think about how we translate a rights-based approach into the language of moral obligation. It's not simply that we have a sign language interpreter so that congregants who can't hear or who have limited hearing ability can access sermons or public addresses, on television or website. It means that we don't do it because the law says it's appropriate. We do it because it's the right thing to do. And so faith leaders like yourselves can play a powerful role by translating that language of obligation. And I have found in my both in my academic and in my interfaith experience that faith leaders are among the most important players in the human rights field. Why? Well, just mention somebody like Dr. Martin Luther King. He put the language of human rights into a faith context and called Christians to be Christians. And we're all grateful for him and for his doing that. And when we see that we have problems of exclusion, we realize that it's not just that we're acting contrary to law, we're acting contrary to what we profess to be our common morality. And each one of these religious traditions brings a unique way of looking at those common obligations. Islam brings its own sense of what justice is. Judaism brings its own sense of what mitzvah means. And unfortunately, we're now seeing in this COVID-19 epidemic that we're seeing that basically people act like human beings. We can be a little on the exclusionary side. We prefer our families and our ethnic groups. We pick out, unfortunately, I think we pick out sometimes characteristics that mean nothing in the cosmic scheme of things, and we use it to exclude people. We've seen this now in the context of the COVID-19 epidemic, and I hope that discussions like this important one will really take us a long way down the road to working together in the faith communities and with secular organizations to ensure the access and inclusion of all people. So, like Ambassador Brownback, I look forward to staying connected and working together with you. Thanks for having me this morning, and I'm looking forward to hearing what y'all have to say.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Brownback and Assistant Secretary Destro. I'm now going to turn it over one by one to each of the panelists or pairs of panelists. And we're running a little behind schedule, so I'm going to ask panelists, I know you have prepared statements, but if you can make them even tighter and just, given the fact that I'm sure you're going to cover some of these comments in the Q&A, if you can keep it crisp, maybe just to 2 minutes, that would be fantastic. And I am going to do our YouTube viewers a disservice because you have, amazing backgrounds and bios, and I'm going to gloss over them in the interest of time. So with that, let me turn it over to our first pair of panelists, Ana Lucia Ariano Barba and Juan de Gouveia, are representatives of the International Disability Alliance, which represents disabled persons organizations across the globe. They are also, respectively, President and Vice President of the Latin American and Caribbean Network of NGOs of persons with disabilities and their families, also known as RIADES. So in the interest of time, Juan Angel, who is a deaf human rights activist, is going to present the views of the International Disability. I'm going to turn it over to him and his sign language interpreter. Shuri, over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I really do appreciate the opportunity to address you all today. I am a board member here with the International Disability Alliance here. It's an alliance of a global of 6 regional organizations and persons with disabilities. I also would like to point out that we are coming on the 30th anniversary of the American with Disabilities Act, ADA, and we also should take note of how much that has impacted our work. So IDA, as I mentioned, is an alliance of 8 global and 6 regional organizations of persons with disabilities. With our member organizations globally, IDA represents 1,100 organizations of persons with disabilities and their families in approximately 180 countries around the globe, with representation from the most marginalized groups, advocating for an estimated 1 billion people with disabilities worldwide. In light of the COVID-19, we are experiencing some health issues from the virus, one that hit my own body a few weeks ago. I would like to thank God for his loving care and mercy to let me survive this virus and to be with you here today and raising this urgent key role of faith that faith leaders have to play towards making all societies inclusive and not to leave any person with disabilities behind. And like we've mentioned, making every life worthy, ending discrimination and exclusion, showing willingness to create conditions for meaningful participation of persons with disabilities during and after the pandemic. As we know, the COVID-19 pandemic has disproportionately hit people with disabilities and put the achievements of the adoption of the CRPD and the 2030 agenda at higher risk. Inclusion has been disrupted by the COVID-19, and we are bringing an alert to that before going backwards. Prior to COVID-19, we were focusing on disability and inclusion, trying to re-exclude and re-marginalize first and foremost, but we are here today to appeal to the disability and inclusion more than ever at all levels. Our concern is to reach disability inclusion at religious communities, and we need to consider two important aspects: the access to information, to make sure that it's accessible, and taking into consideration that information gives us power in decision-making that will impact our lives, participation of people with disabilities in their organizations, and to not leave any people behind. Disability inclusion is an important concept as we adapt to our new normal. No new model of exclusion will be established if the rights of persons with disabilities are central in this new society's design, guided by the CRPD Article 5, Equality and Non-Discrimination, Article 9, Accessibility, Article 21, Freedom of Expression and Opinion and Access to Information. So our key message today is that life has become more challenging with additional barriers. Therefore, in order to realize the CRPD and SDGs for persons with disabilities, religious communities and their faith leaders at all levels must create an inclusive practices with a twin track approach. This means implementing mainstream practices as well as disability-specific practices that protects the lives of persons with disabilities and guaranteeing their rightful inclusion in society. And I would like to thank Marianne Sentawal and the U.S. Department of State's Office of International Religious Freedom for this invigorating effort to promote inclusion with communities around the globe, and for this program raising awareness with forging partnerships between faith communities and persons with disabilities, and translating that into advocacy towards real inclusion with persons with disabilities, making this world a better place for all. We wish you all an interactive day, and God bless for all of you.
Thank you so much to both of you. And with that, let me turn it right over to Ibrahim Abdullah. Ibrahim, if you can turn on your video, please do. Ibrahim Abdullah is a blind human rights activist from Lebanon. He currently serves on the National Council of Disability Executive Board there. He is a professor, a consultant working with the International Labor Organization and the United Nations Economic and Social Council for Western Asia on disability inclusion and human rights issues. With that, Ibrahim, over to you.
Thank you, Miriam. I would like first to thank the State Department for this wonderful event, hoping that we will feel the fruits of this roundtable. First, I would like to speak about the situation in the MENA region and Asia. In this part of the world, there are many challenges faced PWDs, persons with disability, PWDs, and their rights to participate in religious practices and to be included in the community. These challenges exist before, during, and after the pandemic. First, PWDs face physical challenges to reach religious places such as churches, mosques, synagogues, and other temples. Some of these places were built a long time ago, and according to some religious leaders, any kind of modifications for these buildings would ruin the view and the construction of the historical places. Second, attitudinal barriers. Some of the religious leaders still discriminating against PWDs and treat them through a charity approach. And this kind of treatment is not limited to physical disability. It also covers all kinds, including autism, intellectual, and psychosocial disability. Our third, we're talking about poverty. Most of PWDs are poor. Many of them don't have assistive technology and cannot afford paying for the internet, which happen to be very expensive in our regions. This fact prevented many PWDs during the COVID-19 crisis to attend the online virtual services. These services did not even have sign language. On the other hand, religious leaders used to deal with PWDs through visits and phone calls during the crisis, inquiring about their needs, supplying them with food and hygiene materials. In our region, we have a great deal of religious diversity. For example, in Lebanon, we have about 18 religious groups. They disagree on just about everything, but unfortunately, they agree on discriminating and excluding PWDs from the community and its religious practices. These people have to know that inclusion is for everyone and not only for PWDs. Accessibility has to be available for PWDs within the community. No one should be left. Inclusive religious services should be established through TV and social media. Messages should be aimed at clarifying inclusion. What does inclusion mean exactly? And also determine what are the specific needs for PWDs. These people have the right at least to practice their faith and religious duties. Otherwise, they can forget about the rest of the. And finally, I ask myself this funny and sad question. If the COVID-19 does not so social justice and
Ibrahim, you're breaking up. Can you repeat?
Excuse me?
line, the last sentence there, you're breaking up. Can you repeat it?
Okay. Finally, I usually ask myself this funny and sad question. If COVID-19 does not exclude anyone, so how come social justice and equality do not include all of us? Thank you so much. God bless you all.
Thank you, Ibrahim, and thank you for that thought-provoking question. I'm sure there will be more discussion during the Q&A. With that, let's go over to Indonesia. Our first pair from Indonesia will be Bahrul Fuad and Muhammad Imam Aziz. Bahrul Fuad is a wheelchair user, a human rights activist, and currently serves and he has been working with Imam Aziz of Nahdlatul Ulama, one of the largest Islamic organizations in Indonesia and the world, on disability inclusion in faith communities. Imam Aziz is a member of the Chief Executive Board of NU, Nahdlatul Ulama, and has been overseeing two key issues: human resource development and the study of Islamic jurisprudence as it applies to current social issues. So with that, let me turn it over to them to tell their story about how they have been rethinking Islamic jurisprudence and disability inclusion. And in the interest of time, Bahrul Fuad will speak on behalf of Nahdlatul Ulama.
Thank you, Maryam. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I appreciate to be invited to participate in this important meeting. My name is Bahrul Fuad from Indonesia, and I'm a wheelchair user. I always experience obstacles when going to perform Friday prayer at the mosque, and the mosque administrator did not allow my wheelchair to enter the mosque because my wheelchair was considered unclean by them. Here I represent of myself, and concerning the time limitation, I would like to speak on behalf of Al-Ustad Imam Aziz from Nahdlatul Ulama, the biggest Islamic organization in Indonesia. As we know that most of the mosques in Indonesia are not welcoming to wheelchair users and other persons with disabilities. In addition, they do not provide accessible facilities for wheelchair users like me, and do not provide sign language interpreter for the deaf during sermons. I believe that Islam look at people equally as persons with disabilities. We have the same obligation and right before God as non-disabled Muslim. I believe that God does not distinguish us because of our body condition, our skin color, or our language. Based on that experience, I consulted with the ulama, Islamic leader in Nahdlatul Ulama, in order to respect our right as person with disability in conducting the facilitating worship of people with disabilities in Indonesia. I met Ustad Imam Aziz. He is one of influential scholars in Nahdlatul Ulama, and he strongly supports my idea. Then, on October 23, 2017, I was invited to present the religious issue faced by people with disabilities in Indonesia at the National Conference of Islamic Scholars of Nahdlatul Ulama. There were around 2,050 Islamic scholars attended the conference to discuss various contemporary Muslim issues, including disabilities rights. The conference resulted in several recommendations, and one of them was formulating Islamic jurisprudence or fiqh in strengthening the right of persons with disabilities. Religious guidelines include the issue of the right to worship as well as muamalah, or right in social, economic, educational, cultural, health, and political relations. And the book has published has been published in Bahasa Indonesia. So several institutions supported these activities, such as the Asia Foundation Indonesian Office, Nahdlatul Ulama, the Ministry of Religious Affairs, and other institutions, including disabled people organization in Indonesia. However, we still face the biggest challenge in shifting the community perspective toward person with disability from the charity to right-based one. There are still many people see that disabled people or disability as a curse of the sins committed by a parent. Then disability is considered as shameful to the family. Nahdlatul Ulama says that Nahdlatul Ulama says that the person with disabilities are perfect human beings created by God. Imperfection occurs because society and the state do not fulfill the right of person with disability, so they cannot develop optimally as other citizens. Therefore, our community and the state should provide the necessary facilities and reasonable accommodation for persons with disabilities. I realize that people with disabilities in other religions also face the similar problem like me. So it can be a good model for other religions to fulfill the religious right of persons with disability. In this context, we need your support, especially from the U.S. State Department, to promote what we are already done. Publishing the Fiqh of Strengthening Disability as guidance of religious rights for persons with disabilities to wider audience, including the faith leaders through effective campaign and dissemination. Emphasize the guideline on creating accessibility building and public facilities, and seek your support to advocate and lobby with related ministry and local government. So this is, I think, our story, and then maybe Ustadz Imam Aziz will also respond the question if you have some question for our story. Thank you, and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Mr. Fuad and Imam Aziz. We look forward to the discussion. I'm going to introduce Dr. Ofa Muzakir. I know she's been having some connectivity issues, and so I'll go ahead and introduce her now. But in case, Dr. Ofa, you're having issues, we'll go on to the next panelist and hope to catch you right after that. Dr. Ofa Muzakir is an educator, activist, and a religious leader. She is a member of the Social Welfare Council of ICEA, which is the women's religious organization affiliated with Muhammadiyah, one of Indonesia's large Islamic organizations. She has been involved in editing the book on Islamic jurisprudence that Indonesia is producing, and among other things, she's also been involved in the development and passage of Indonesia's Disabilities Bill of 2016. So with that, Dr. Ofa, I hope you can be seen and heard, and I'll turn it over to you. I think it's unfortunate we're having some connectivity issues, so I'm going to go on to our next two panelists, and hopefully Dr. Ofa can join us during the Q&A. Our next panelists are an interfaith pair that has been working together on disability inclusion as a cause for common concern among faith leaders in Uganda. Dr. Lawrence Smusu is the Vicar General of the Kampala Catholic Archdiocese and also the chaplain at Makerere University Business School. And his friend and colleague, Sheikh Waiswa Muhammad Ali, is the second deputy mufti of Uganda's Muslim Supreme Council and the imam at the same university. They've been working together on disability inclusion, not only in education, but also in Uganda's national political life. And with that, Father Larry, we'll turn it over to you, and then Sheikh Ali.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a wonderful cooperation and venture. Here in Uganda, we have the stigma. Many parents still find it a challenge to accept children with a disability. Sometimes they hide them and even deny them chances of advancement. And yet some of them are very, very talented and very intelligent. The children, the persons themselves also have a hard time fitting in society as they are looked at not in the same way as the persons without disability.
Father Larry, we've lost you. Can you repeat, Father Larry?
Engage in sensitization.
Father Larry, can you repeat? I think we've lost you. Not Sheikh Ali, if you're online and you have connectivity, turn it over to you. And
yeah. To sensitize, inform, and prepare our congregations to welcome the persons with disabilities.
Good morning and good afternoon. I repeat, Second Deputy Mufti Uganda.
Which part? Hello?
Father Larry, we lost you there for a good bit. So we actually, if you want to repeat just a couple of statements, and we'll turn it over to Sheikh Ali, because your connectivity was lost.
Talking about the sensitization, that we as church, we endeavor to sensitize, inform, and prepare our congregations to welcome persons with disabilities, respect their rights, and engage with them as they engage with others. Also, we engage in capacity building. In our church, the Archdiocese of Kampala, we have taken steps to send our priests to specialize in persons with disabilities studies. Some have completed and have returned and already are serving in our diocese. We have also resources for the persons with disabilities. The Bible Society of Uganda, for example, where I was member of the board of directors for some years, is producing Bibles in English, but also now there are translations in Uganda, so that the people with a disability can access the Word of God. And at the university, we have created structures for persons with disabilities because we need these structures which cater directly for them. At the university, we have a disability resource and learning center to which these people go and are assisted. Some we refer them to this center, others they are referred back to us for assistance. Some cannot see the small print, for example, and during the examination period, the center sees to it that for the papers these persons sit, their scripts are printed in bigger fonts that they can easily read. And this has to be cross-cutting, buildings with ramps, building with bigger spaces for easy movement of wheelchairs, and so on. I thank you very much. May God bless you all.
Thank you, Father Larry. And Sheikh Ali, over to you next. You have the floor.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm quite privileged to be part of this roundtable, which involves people of high caliber in the work with a disability. I thank you, Mariam, for having let me be part of this group. I, as part of the Interreligious Council of Uganda, we have been able to influence a number of policies, both at public institutions and Parliament, Uganda Parliament. Today in Uganda Parliament, the representatives for people with disabilities from all the regions of the country. As my colleague has just indicated, we influenced this to happen at the Makerere University Business School, and I'm glad to say that the university had launched a campaign to promote disability inclusion in 2019, and a year later, the Minister for Education, who visited the institutions, launched moves for supporting people with disabilities. Here with me are 2 newsletters in that respect, which I will share with you over the emails. Now, turning to the Muslim community. Indeed, the Muslim community is still far behind in as far as issues of disabilities are concerned. We have very few sheikhs who have specialized in preaching, in helping to preach to people with a disability, and also teaching them the texts of the Holy Quran and things like that. So we require more training of our clerics, as my colleague has indicated that for them, they have already sent a big number to do that elsewhere in the world. We Muslims have few textbooks that are there to be used by the people with a disability. We need also a hand in that respect. We have done some trainings to professionalize the Muslim clerics to do the work, but still this work needs to be promoted in so many ways. As my colleague has indicated, here in Uganda, people with disabilities are very poor. They lack tools to use. And in fact, of recent, we have been able to associate with one NGOs, charitable NGOs, that came to our headquarters with donations of wheelchairs, which we distributed to the people with a disability from various regions of Uganda. So we need such materials to help the people with the disabilities. Also, the students who come from very poor families need to be supported with the scholarship. We have been able to do something because we at the headquarters, we have our own university, the Islamic University College, and we offer bursaries to such people. We have encouraged to other international Islamic universities in Uganda also to offer some facilities for people with disabilities. We have uploaded with a call to other public institutions and private institutions to open up to people with disabilities. And this campaign is ongoing. We need to also strengthen the capacity for conducting counseling and guidance, both of the people with disabilities and also their guardians and parents, since there is also stigma, as my colleague has indicated, that some of these people take these people as of low stature, that they are not equal to the people who are not disabled. Yet, actually, in the actual sense, we find that there are people with a disability who are very bright and who achieve a lot more, as I will share with you the 2 newsletters I have with students at university who have been able to score highly and to participate in international events. The university has put on its calendar Day for Disabled every year. They celebrate it. And they address a number of issues, right from morning to evening. And the university has offered jobs for those people with disabilities who qualified with, of course, first-class degrees and second-class upper. So our campaign is ongoing. We need to collaborate to do a lot more. I personally write in newspapers, locally, especially the government newspaper. I write articles on addressing common issues, and disables is one of them.
Sheikh Ali, I'm so sorry. In the interest of time, I just wanted to save some of your examples.
Yes,
I just wanted to save some of your examples for the question and answer.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sheikh Ali, and also Father Larry for the great work that you are doing jointly on, and really as an interfaith initiative in Uganda. Dr. Rofa's connectivity has been restored, and so Dr. Rofa, we are a little behind schedule, actually quite behind schedule. So I'll turn it over to you. The floor is yours, and if you can just make a few brief comments about the work that you are doing through ICEA.
Okay, thank you very much, Miriam, for the time. First of all, I would like to thank the U.S. Department for inviting me to join this very wonderful event. Can you hear me? Is my voice okay? Okay. I think all of my colleagues before has been addressing a lot of issues that I would like to talk today. Especially Mr. Baharul Fuad from Indonesia. I think we are working together in a lot of events, and like Nahdlatul Ulama, me from Muhammadiyah, Aisyah is the female wing of Muhammadiyah, also has been working on the writing of the fiqh or Islamic jurisprudence on disability, because we are thinking that religious issue is one of the barriers and cultural barriers that we've been experiencing in Indonesia. I would like to just underline two things that, in my perspective, is very important. First of all, by other colleague, changing perspective or shifting the understanding of community concerning people with disability is very important in advocacy work. So in every work that I'm doing, advocacy on disability, I'm always starting with changing perspective. So things like how we shifting people understanding from charity to right is very challenging, because charity perspective is something that all religious or faith, including Islam, has been promoting, and it's become a foundation of all social activities and others, activities done by religious groups. So when we're talking about accessibility of the mosques and others, as has been mentioned by Mr. Fuad previously, we're talking that this beauty of charity has been, become an obstacle or become a source of discriminations and negative attitude on stigma for people with disability. That's why we need to change that perspective. I would like to give you an example of one of the discussion that we have in the faith community. A few months ago, I was involved in a meeting with the Indonesian Council of Ulama, and one of the discussions that come up is about the accessibility of the mosque. I remember one of the participants of the meeting, described about the rukhsah, the concessions that Muslims have. So in this sense, when we're talking about accessibility, about the difficulties that the people with disability go to the mosque, then this ulama mentioned that, we have a concession in Islamic jurisprudence, we have concessions. You don't need to go to. So this kind of perspective is something that we daily experience in the faith community concerning issue disabilities. So that's why I go back to my statement before, changing the perspective on disability, and one of it is by underlining how we see the disability, how we position disability in the community, and also the terminology that we are using to refer to disability. Example that I would like to put here is a couple of months ago I was involved in a workshop on social inclusion for inclusive education for student with disabilities. This workshop is attended by hundreds of participants coming from all over Indonesia. So in my session, the first thing that I invite participants to do is identifying the local language that the participant using in referring to people with disability. We managed to identify a long list of terminology, local terminology, because Indonesia has the various hundreds of local language. So we came up with a long list of, and none of them are positive. None of them having positive association of person with disability. So by these steps, people start to be aware that there is nothing good, that the perspective is very negative about people with disability. So this is the thing that I would like to underline. So in my perspective, again, changing people's perspective is very important in advocacy works. And in terms of religion, we have to do this by also rereading the Quran, the religious text, with disability-friendly eye, and as has been done by a colleague in NU and also in Muhammadiyah, we try to rereading the Quranic text and developing the Islamic jurisprudence that ensure the guarantee of people with disabilities. I think that's all my statement, Miriam.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. With that, let me turn it over to Father Rafael Tavikian in Jordan. He is the parish priest of the Armenian Catholic Church in Jordan and Jerusalem since 2018, and has been working closely with Jordan's Higher Council on Disability to facilitate access and inclusion for persons with disabilities in his religious community. He has also served as an interpreter in refugee camps in Greece and has a long career in ministry. Father Rafi, over to you.
Thank you very much. Blessing to you all. Thank you for the State Department for making this roundtable realized today, and thank for all the participants. I would like to start my statement by saying God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, which means all human beings are born free and equal and should be treated the same way. All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in spirit of brotherhood. The word equality in the human rights definition is about ensuring that every individual has an equal opportunity to make the most of their lives and talents. It is also the belief that no one should have poorer life chances because of the way they were born, where they come from, what they believe, or whatever, or whether they have a disability. Equality comes from God, not man. All men are created equal. This is a quotation, comes as a part of one of the statements of the U.S. Declaration of Independence, as mentioned before by Ambassador Brownback and Mr. Roberto. Moreover, I believe the change or transformation and to adopt this truth start within our mind, within our thoughts that influence all around us into our big family, the humanity. We must believe in the equality as an essential dignity of men and women of all ethnicities, ages, classes, and conditions. We must recognize that all persons are created in the image of God and are to reflect that image in the community of believers, in the home, and in the society. The challenges that I face as faith leader comes to what I suggest today. I will suggest 2 points in my statement. My first point is about the necessity of a campaign. The importance and the need of a campaign about the subject of persons with disability to reach the families who has a member in the family with disability, to make them feel, believe, and see that they are not disregarded and they are welcome into our communities. The same for the community, to make them realize that the person with disability, he or she is a member of our community. My second point in my statement is preserving. I believe that the unity of the family is within service, thankfulness, compassion, endurance, creativity, justice, wisdom, peace, and safety. And all this should start from our homes. For that, as faith leader, I believe we need to make this campaign within our church and mosques into our spiritual homes. We need to preserve and transformation from A to Z, which I'm trying to make it to realize with the Higher Council of the Rights of the Person with Disabilities here in Jordan. When I say from A to Z, there is a long list. I don't want to read all the list, but I would like to say the most important thing that we need for the person with disabilities to get connected with our communities directly. I'm speaking about transportation, parking lots, inclined passages with the necessary measurements, sitting chairs, bench, toilets, indoor lightning, sign language interpreters to facilitate communication for deaf people or people with hard hearing, screen for persons who are blind, specialists to take care of persons with disability in case of emergency, meetings, workshops, playground for children with disability, education. It might be many other things that they didn't cross in my mind, I didn't put in my statement, but it is something I will start with as faith leader. This can be done within our authority. Of course, we have much more bigger issues, such as the hiring of a person with disability in our communities, with our streets, malls, and markets, that they are not suitable for the person with disabilities to go easily in. As I've heard about the public transportation here in Jordan, of which I can speak, that the government already has taken into consideration with the new fast line bus transportation system, which is under construction so far, the availability of transportation of persons with disability. I will end here my statement and let my examples for the question and answer section. Blessing to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Father Rafi. Our last panelist today is from Ghana. She has been a nun since 1997. Sister Stan Therese Mario Mumuni has been involved in rescuing children with disabilities from ritualistic murder because people in society have basically wanted to discard them. So, Sister Stan, I'd like to turn it over to you because you have a very compelling story and look forward to hearing from you now. Thank you. Sister Stan? Okay. She's experiencing some connectivity issues. We can just give her a moment. Sorry. It's unfortunate she has experienced some connectivity issues. So she was our last speaker, but given the connectivity issues and in the interest of time, I would like to move us into the moderated question and answer session. And I'd like to turn it over to Ambassador Brownback and Assistant Secretary Destro to lead us in that conversation so that you all can have a more direct dialogue. And so if you can select the raise icon when you want to. People aren't talking over each other. And Ambassador Brownback, I'd like to turn it over to you, sir, to begin.
Okay. Thanks, Miriam. And I know we've had several connection problems here today, and I apologize. There's just kind of no way to really be able to make up for that. But I think this has been a very good session on some very pointed issues that need to be addressed. And I'm glad that we're doing that, and I'm glad that we can raise these and put these out. And I want to say first to the panelists, thank you for all the work that you've been doing around the world, various places, difficult circumstances, advocating for people with challenges and disabilities that they have. So really appreciate your efforts leaning in, because I think they're critical. I want to point out one thing, and then I want to make one request. One is that when we engage and embrace people that have difficulties or disabilities, it makes the rest of us better. They're really a gift to us when we engage them. And let me give you a quick example. Miriam and I both have a common friend, a lady by the name of Stacy Cervenka. She worked in my Senate office, and that's her maiden name. And Stacy was blind. She was so talented. She would give tours of the U.S. Capitol all the time, and people would watch her giving tours because she would memorize where various things were. She would point them out accurately, and people would ask for her tour guide as a tour guide because she was just so good at it. And everybody else would then go, well, now if she can do this work in that way, I can do a better job. They were just inspired by her abilities that she overcame her disabilities with. And that's what I've seen this in numerous situations where people with challenges really make the rest of us better. And they challenge us to work and do better. Then my point that I would like to make to some of the panelists, and maybe one or two, because I know we're really short on time. If we're supposed to end at 9:45, we're real short here. Is that I hope that one of the things you can do is bind together with fellow activists in pushing these issues in your country. We've been pushing around the world to establish religious freedom roundtables. And we've got about just under 30 of those created in various countries where religious activists and people interested in religious freedom come together to stand for each other's religious freedom rights. And we're so much stronger when we stand together. And we're seeing these be powerful, effective grassroots tools in various countries to get things done. This year is the 30th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, landmark piece of legislation in the United States that really pushed accessibility for people with disability. I just think that if people can bind together in their various countries, maybe it's with Religious Freedom Roundtable people, and part of the issue that they push is accessibility. I think those would be a very helpful thing to do. And I know, Miriam, if we have time for the panelists to respond, or if we really just ought to go to Bob Destro to have Bob make a comment or two before we hit the appointed hour.
Sir, we have a few minutes. If you'd like to hear from some of the panelists, unmute yourself. Ibrahim, did you want to share some thoughts?
Me?
Yes.
Yes. Definitely. I truly believe, Mr. Ambassador, that religious leaders and faith leaders can be really a powerful tools to promote inclusion in all its aspects, including accessibility, full participation, independent living. All these aspects are very important as persons with disability. These people, meaning religious leaders, can really reach to a lot of people, especially those who attend churches or mosques or synagogue or whatever temples. they can preach them, they can tell them about inclusion, they can try to promote the human rights approach instead of the charity approach that they have been using. They've been trying to help. I mean, they've been helping a lot, but unfortunately, on the base of a charity approach. And I think we could conclude that from some of the remarks that we heard today. So this is the thing that they can do. And I think as your role as State Department and your role around the world, I think you can push for that. You can try to talk to these people, meaning religious leaders, and convince them that today is the human rights approach. And it's over for the charity. We don't want that anymore. We don't want to take it anymore. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibrahim. I know that Dr. Ofa, you had some perspectives to share on the charity approach, both as a religious leader and as an activist on disability issues and a mother of a child with a disability. Did you want to share any of your policy recommendations for the group?
Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. As I mentioned before, changing perspective is a crucial step in disability advocacy. That's why I think the U.S. government should conduct disability awareness program for religious leaders. Religious leaders training through multi-faith conference focused on disability inclusion in faith community would be very helpful, because in my view, elevating disability as a related issue in diversity and multiculturalism is a good approach instead of treating it as separate or isolated issue from others. Another way the U.S. government can elevate disability inclusion and fund religious freedom for a person with disability is to include this issue in mainstream events such as the next Ministerial to Advance Religious Freedom or other event, and to make it priority issue for the International Religious Freedom Alliance and the government and faith leaders participating in it. In addition to that, the involvement of persons with disability in disability advocacy is a must, and therefore religious community and faith leaders always need to be encouraged to work hand in hand with disability organizations. The last point I would like to underline is that education is also a very important area in promoting disability inclusions. Religious school or religious education in this part is a place to train future religious leaders. And that's why I think it's very important that the U.S. government also put serious considerations and attention to religious educations both in country and other countries. Thank you, Miriam. I think that's
Thank you, Dr. Ofa. I know we're almost out of time, but Sister Stan's connectivity has been restored. And so, Sister Stan, if you wanted to make a few remarks about how we can help your efforts or a little bit about your efforts given the pandemic, that would be great. Sister Stan? Okay. Unfortunately, it looks like we still have connectivity issues. And since we are near the end of time, I want to thank our esteemed panelists and our very distinguished principals for their time today. And to our viewers on YouTube, I want to thank you for tuning in and for your thoughts and feedback. We would love to hear from you. If you can tweet us at StateIRF or at IRF Ambassador, or contact us via our office email, religiousfreedom@state.gov. That's religiousfreedom@state.gov. What a rich discussion this has been. Ambassador Brownback and Assistant Secretary Destro, would you like to make any concluding comments and take us home?
Bob, you want to jump in here? I made some comments just a bit earlier.
Sure. Thank you for taking the time this morning to join us. I thought that the discussion was absolutely excellent. There's a lot of good food for thought here. You've certainly given me some great ideas about what we should be doing in our DRL programming with respect to disability issues. I was especially captivated by the efforts that many of you have made with the ulama about trying to get an Islamic theology of disability out there. I mean, if we all start with the proposition that God made us equal, then it just becomes a question of detail. And so I thank you all. I'm not going to say anything more. We're just about out of time, but I do want to thank you on behalf of all of us in DRL for your input this morning.
Thank you both, Ambassador Brownback and Assistant Secretary Destro. Thank you once again to our esteemed panelists, and especially since you joined from all different time zones all across the world, and to our panelists who are celebrating the Eid al-Adha festivities and this holiday. Thank you for making time during the holiday to join us. And with that, we'll say that's a wrap, as they say in show business. And thank you so much. And please watch us on YouTube and tweet us.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. God bless you.
Mariam, can we take a picture together? Thank you, Mariam. Open the video.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah.